This week's guitar lesson is your ultimate guide to bending on guitar. I'm going to go through the most common bends that are found in songs and guitar solos, lead guitar parts. We're going to go over what the bends actually are, what you need to do, how to do it, and also what you'll see on your tab that tells you that you need to do this type of bend. I'm going to be giving you some examples from songs of those bends and also a few tips and tricks that you might be able to use. So let's jump right into it, and we're going to start off with a full tone bend, which is really the most common bend that you will see on your tablature or in your songs. So a full tone bend essentially means that we pick a fret, so we're going to go on the 6th fret of the G, and a full tone bend means we bend that note up to get the sound of the 8th fret G. Okay, so a full tone is essentially 2 frets up, or 2 notes up, whichever way you want to look at it. So it sounds like this. You might be wondering, well, how can I hear that note in the bend? Well, this is an exercise that I did quite a lot. So what you would do is you would pick that 8th fret G and really get in your head that sound of that note. It's really important. And then when you feel ready, then you go to your 6th fret for your bend. And as you can hear there, we've got the note. Now this does require a lot of practice, okay? You're probably not gonna just do that bend and get it first time. It might take you 3, 4, 5 attempts. But it's really important that we reach that note, otherwise the bend sounds a little bit out of tune. So the example of this bend is Rock and Roll Star by Oasis. So the intro, it's on the 6th fret G, funnily enough. Okay, so it sounds like this. And then it goes off into the noisy part. So the reason why I chose this song is it's actually got a couple of bends in it, but the first bend that we're looking at, this full tone bend, is the very first one. So we pick and then try and reach that note. And that's also something else I like to do, is I like to do the bend, reach that note, give it a pick, and then go to the actual note itself on the 8th fret and just make sure that I've got it. This is probably also going to test the tuning on your guitar, so your guitars may go a little bit out of tune. You might just need to tune it up, particularly on that G string. It's always the G string, isn't it? So let's move on now to a half tone bend. So a half tone bend is essentially what it says on the tin, is that rather than then going up 2 notes or up 2 frets, we're only going up 1 fret. So when we do our bend on that 6th fret G, we're actually going to be trying to get that 7th fret G note. So what that means for our bend is we don't go quite as high up, okay, it's much lower. So it would be like this. And again, you can use the same exercises or practices that I showed you for the full tone bend. So this is what you might see on your tablature for a full tone bend, is that you'll have the number first that you're going to be bending up. Okay, so for this Oasis song, it will be 6, and then there will be a B. Okay, so the B means bend. So it's the 6th fret, so you need to put your fingers on that 6th fret, and we want to bend, and then it will have the next number that you need to bend up to, which for the full tone bend will be 8. So in total it would be 6, B, 8, which indicates that you pick your 6th fret, get up to 8, and then that's it. So there is a different bend which will have the letter R in it. So that will then turn it into 6, B, 8, R, and 6. So what this essentially means is you bend up from 6 to 8, and then you return back down to 6. Now the difference of the one that I did before, where it was just 6, B, 8, is on that you just bend up, and then you kind of leave it there and go to your next note. It's probably the best way to describe it, is you leave your bend when you get there. On the release, it's pretty self-explanatory. You bend up and then you release it back down. And that's usually in one movement, like that. So those are the 2 different ways that you can do the full tone bend and the half tone bend. For the half tone bend, what you will see is 6B7, okay, rather than 8, but the bend and release is just exactly the same for both of those types of bends. So for your full tone and half tone bends, you may not actually see the letter B. You may see it's almost like a roof of a house, so it's missing almost like a triangle without the floor, and that essentially just means to bend again. Okay, so for example, on this 17th fret, it would be 17, the little triangle thing, up to the note that you want to reach, so 19. It's just exactly the same, it's a bend. Generally, for a release, you may also have that triangle, which is like that. It may actually look like that for the release. Okay, so if you think about it in your bends, up for your bend and down for your release. So now we're going to cover what is called a pre-bend. So this Oasis song actually has a pre-bend in it. So I'm going to play it for you now and just see whether you can hear what a pre-bend is. So we've got. So a pre-bend is essentially where rather than pick and bend your string up, you bend your string up before you pick. So you need to push that string up or bend that string up before you even pick. And you've got to find that note, pick it, and then come back down. Now this is probably one of the harder bends because we need to find that note without hearing anything. But you can still use the same technique. So for this, we're trying to find that 8th fret G, and there it is. So what you'll probably do is you'll go up and not quite find the note. So if I do it for you now, so you can hear that's a little bit of an out of tune note. So what you're going to need to do with your fingers, if you hear that, then maybe push a little bit further up, or you might even go too far. Okay, and actually push on further. Now obviously I've been doing this for quite a while and I've practiced this quite a lot, so when I do my pre-bends I can find that note pretty easy. You start to get a feel for it, but at the beginning you really have to do it in quite a manual way of picking the note that we want and trying to search for that note. So the next bend that we're going to look at is a quarter bend. Now this is quite a tricky one, even though the bend is quite short. The reason why it's tricky is because on our guitar we can't actually move up a quarter. Okay, so for the full tone we went up 2 frets, for the half tone we went up 1 fret, for the quarter we can't. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually demonstrate a little bit of a Led Zeppelin riff that uses this quarter bend in it. So this is part of Black Dog. And that bend there, that's the quarter bend. Okay, so you're literally putting that finger, and you can do the quarter bend with just your first finger, and you're just pulling that string down a little bit. So on your tablature for the quarter note, you'll actually see the fraction of a quarter. Okay, so it'll be 1/4. And then sometimes it might even have an arrow, depending on how good your tablature actually is. All that essentially means is you just bend it down a quarter, or you can bend it up a quarter, I guess, but either way is fine. So that basically covers the quarter bend. There's not really too much happening on that. And on that bend, most of the time you're just going to bend it down. You're not going to release it back. And then we're going to move into another really common bend. It's the unison bend. So the unison bend is essentially where we hit 2 strings. So far when we've done our bends, it's just been a single pick on a single string. A unison bend is this. I'm almost strumming the 2 strings really, rather than just picking one string and picking the other. You want to hit them both at the same time essentially. So what usually happens with the unison bends is you'll place a finger on one string, so we're going to go for the 15th fret on the B. Then you're going to place a finger on the 17th fret of the G. That second finger goes on the 16th fret of the G just for a little bit of support. So when you've got that in place, you then hit both the strings, so the G and the B. And similar to the other bends, the full tone bend, the half tone bend, that same theory applies for these unison bends. So we need to travel somewhere, and for this song we only want to travel to that 18th fret. Okay, but you could theoretically also go to that 19th fret too. You may see unison bends that are a little bit more stretchy, so it would be on the high E and on the B string. It's only in a couple songs that I've come across it, but the theory is still the same in that you hit two strings at the same time. It just might be that your finger frets are different. Okay, so we're a little bit more stretching over on this one compared to the one that we played before. So I'm going to play you now the first guitar solo to I Believe in a Thing Called Love so that you can hear this unison bend. Again, this unison bend is a little bit tricky because we got to try and find our note while hearing two different strings. Okay, so this requires a little bit of practice too. For unison bend, what you will see, so for example, if we take this one, okay, so you'll have that 15th fret B on your tablature, you'll have the 17th fret G, okay, and that will essentially be stacked on top of each other because remember it's almost like I guess technically a chord we're playing there. And then you'll see your B and then the note that you want to reach. Okay, so this might be 15, 17 stacked up on top of each other, B to 18 or 19. So that's what you'll see on your tablature for that. So the most important tip for bending, for your full tone bends, your half tone bends, your pre-bends, etc., is how we place our fingers. For example, a full tone bend, if we're on that 17th fret and we want to go to the 19th fret, don't just try and use one finger, okay, because you're going to really struggle with that. So use your third finger there, but also place your second finger down on the fret before and your first finger down on the fret before that. Okay, so at the moment I've got my first finger on the 15th fret, second finger on the 16th fret, and third finger on the 17th fret. Now don't worry, even though we've got our fingers on those frets, the only one that matters at the moment with all these pushed down is that 17th fret. And what using these three fingers does is it provides support to get that bend up. Okay, without the support, very difficult doing it with just the muscles in that third finger. I also tend to put my thumb a little bit higher, kind of wrap it around the neck. I find the combination of those three fingers and the thumb lets me have quite a lot of strength to get the bend up and also control if I need to do some vibrato or come back down. The only other thing left that we need to cover is vibrato. So vibrato, even though it's not called bending, it is a type of bending. So the very simple vibrato that you can do is just picking a string and you essentially pull it down and return it pretty quick. It doesn't even need to be pretty quick, you can actually just do it really, really slow if it's a more melodic piece of music. But we still want to travel to a note and come back. It's really important throughout all of these bends is we need to travel to a note and we either stop at that note or we come back. With vibrato, we come back. Okay, and we travel there and back lots and lots of times, and that's how you get the vibrato. There is also a vibrato on your bends. Now this is probably the most advanced technique of it all because it can go quite wrong and it can sound quite bad essentially. So essentially what it is you do your bend. So rather than stop and come back, you'd go up and do the same vibrato that we did here, but at the top of your bend. Now this is tricky because we need the movements to be really small. If you start doing really big vibratos at the top of your bends, it's going to go out of tune and it's just going to sound pretty horrible. You want to keep it nice and consistent, and then you want to get back to your original note. What I see the most with people playing guitar and people learn guitar on vibrato, they'll just automatically go for a quick vibrato. Okay, it's really important that you take into account the tempo and the rhythm of the song that you are playing. Or if you're creating original music, then you need to think about how does that vibrato fit within the context of the song. And a really good thing to do is listen to some guitar solos. So The Darkness and that I Believe in a Thing Called Love song is really good for this because you can really hear that vibrato both on notes and also on the bends too. But essentially, if you can get that vibrato speed right, that sounds much better than just hitting your string and just doing that, which can happen quite a lot. Okay, it kind of sounds cool in different situations, but a nice, consistent and fluid vibrato sounds much, much better. For vibrato now, you'll see a number of different things depending on your tab. You might have the word V, which just means vibrato. You might see a squiggly line, that also means vibrato. So that has been my ultimate guide to bending on guitar. I haven't included all of the bends that you can do. Jimmy Page did some crazy 1.5 tone bends or even 2 full tone bends. I haven't included those because they're not massively used in most rock songs or even pop songs. So I've just given you the common ones. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you did, click the like button, click the subscribe and the bell. That way you'll be notified each week when I upload a guitar lesson.